Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Larry Parks Show. I'm Larry Parks, and tonight we have a stunning show. We're going to be talking about how prescription benefit management industry inflates the cost of your drugs. And we have with us as a guest Dr. Donald Catalino. He is one of the foremost experts, maybe the foremost experts in the United States on this issue. He's a 1982 graduate of St. John's University College of Pharmacy, and he purchased his first community pharmacy in Far Rockaway in 1984. That's right, 20-some-odd years ago? 30 years ago. Yep. And eventually he owned and operated 6 independent community pharmacies. So he's got hands-on experience from the pharmacy point of view. For the past year, he's been a chairman of the Long Island Pharmacists Society, as well as past president and chairman of the Pharmacists Society of the State of New York. He's the winner of numerous very important prizes. As president of the State Society, he has spent many years educating unions, corporations, and municipalities how the prescription benefit management industry operates with a review to reducing costs of prescription drugs. Before we get started, Donald, tell our viewers a little bit about the history of prescription benefit managers and how they came to have this really anti-competitive position in the marketplace.
Yes, Larry, back in the 70s, many insurance programs were considered indemnity programs. So a patient would basically pay out of pocket and submit a claim form to their insurer or their union, per se, and they would be reimbursed a portion of what they spent out of pocket. So there's a lot of paperwork involved. The prescription benefit managers, or at that time were called prescription benefit administrators, introduced themselves to the world, and one of the first major contracts that was awarded to a prescription benefit manager was the United Auto Workers with the contract with paid prescriptions. So basically their function at that time, as we moved from indemnity to managed care, was to kind of take the workload off of the insurer or the payer of the insurance.
So paper processing.
Exactly right. Yes, they were responsible for claims processing, eligibility, claims data and analysis, reporting obviously, and provider accountability. So that was kind of their job at that time, late 70s, early 80s.
And payments.
Absolutely. They handled the flow of monies back and forth between provider and payer.
Now, something happened to you in your career at that time where you saw the writing on the wall. Why don't you tell our viewers about that?
Well, I was an intern at the time, and I worked for a forward-thinking man. I consider one of my mentors, my greatest mentors, and to this day I call him the Nostradamus of pharmacy, because when he saw the first P.B.M. or PBA card, he predicted that this was going to morph into something that was going to become a behemoth and would eventually be responsible for the demise of the profession.
So originally, the profession, you had all these little drugstores. People would get a prescription, they go to the drugstore, the pharmacist would fill it.
Correct.
And now it morphed into something else, and the something else really put the prescription benefit manager as the middleman between it. And now let me see if I have this right, the prescription benefit management companies started to take all the gravy.
Exactly. When they first invented themselves, they were considered prescription benefit administrators. They administered the plan. Over the years, they figured out ways to profit in the process. And they changed their name, actually, to prescription benefit managers. And they developed numerous methodologies in order to boost their profits. So they kind of moved away from just processing claims and data collection, and they became a profit powerhouse, as this middleman.
Well, one of the ways you did that, I know you explained it pretty well, had to do with spread pricing. Why don't you explain to our viewers what that's about? Under
the traditional P.B.M. model, spread pricing is probably one of the largest sources of revenue for a prescription benefit manager. When a pharmacy signs a contract with a prescription benefit manager, it's basically non-negotiable. And you also have a payer who signs a contract. Now, the payer never knows what the pharmacy is being paid. So what happens is the pharmacy will be paid $10 for this service, and the PBM will bill the payer $40 for that service, making $30 in the middle. So that's an example of spread pricing. And that's a very big source of revenue for PBMs over the last 30 years.
So let me see if I have this right. Originally, the buyer of a drug would get it from the pharmacy, but now we insert this middleman in between the pharmacy and the buyer, and the buyer just sees the middleman, and the middleman overcharges the buyer and gets it at a substantial discount from the pharmacy.
Absolutely.
Is that what we have? Is that
Correct,
what you're saying?
yes.
And one of the points you made, I recall, has to do with disclosure. Talk to that issue.
Well, the old model, when PBAs first came onto the scene, was somewhat of a transparent pass-through model. So whatever the pharmacy was paid is what the payer paid.
They just process the paper.
They were processing paper and getting a fee for that service. Then, over the years, there was smoke and mirrors inserted into the equation. So the payer was not allowed
Not allowed by statute, or not allowed
contractually
contractually?
to see what was being paid to the provider. So basically, all the payer saw was how much they were being billed each week or every other week for that particular service.
All right. To make this clearer to our viewers, put some numbers on us. Give us an example of the spread, what we're talking about in money.
It varies based on the drug.
Give us an example.
We've seen instances where a $2 drug from a mail order house will come out of there and be billed at $114.
$2 to $114.
Yes, sir.
That's what the prescription benefit
Yes,
manager gets?
yes. A drug such as simvastatin, which is used for cholesterol control, costs about $2 for a 90-day supply. So we actually have invoices that show that one of the PBMs would bill the payer $114 for that $2 product. Now, if the patient came into the pharmacy, it may be even a different price. It may be much less. So the numbers are all over the board, but just from that one example, you could see how egregious the process is.
So the prices are generally not public. This is part of the secrecy.
No. And they use what's called a MAC list. It stands for Maximum Allowable Cost. So they base a lot of their prices, especially for generic drugs, on what's called a MAC list. The problem is that I've never seen the MAC list. The payer never sees the MAC list. They'll either tell us that it's proprietary or it's ever-changing. And so for 30 years of being in the profession, I've asked for a MAC list numerous times, and they can't provide one. And basically, that's your price list. You go to a diner, you go to a restaurant, you can see the prices. With the PBMs, they say, we have a price list, but you can't see it.
That's a good analogy. So it's like going into a restaurant. They don't tell you what the prices are. Have a nice meal. You get
Right.
all done. They say, well, here's the price.
Here's the bill.
Right.
And that's what you get.
And if you have insurance, the insurance pays it, but you're really paying the premium.
Well, somebody's paying it. It's, if it's an organized labor, a union or a fund,
Or a company.
that's, they're taking money out of the employee's paycheck to cover this payment. So the money is coming from the worker. And that's why, I think there has to be more awareness as to what's been going on the last 30 years.
It's coming from the worker in the case of a union. In the case of a business, it's coming off the bottom line.
Absolutely. But it's also, many companies will charge their employees, a portion of their health care costs.
So they'll pass it on. So
Absolutely.
One way or another, what we're talking about here, it sounds to me as though the prescription benefit managers are being improperly enriched as a result of the secrecy, and I don't know how to describe it, but this arrangement that you've described. Is that fair to say?
I would say, I would have to say that you're absolutely right, and this is a real good example of the American public being fleeced without their knowledge.
Before I get to the big dollars, many of us get our drugs through so-called mail order. I get what I get, a 90-day supply. And you have some thoughts about that. Why don't you share that with our viewers?
Yeah, that's a good topic. Mail order pharmacy was started by the PBMs. They own the mail order pharmacies. So basically, they would tell a payer that it'll be cheaper for them to have their employees or their covered lives use the mail order house. So basically, their sales pitches to steer business to themselves. And numerous studies have shown, now they will promise the payer savings by using mail, but numerous studies have shown, independent studies at universities, have shown that mail order is actually more expensive. In addition, when we use mail order, it initiates a disconnect between the pharmacist and the patient.
Well, we're cutting the pharmacist out.
Exactly. There's a big difference between getting a medicine, personal face-to-face contact with a pharmacist, or getting it from the mailman. There's a big difference there. Then we have a lot of waste that goes into the equation when we talk about mail order. Temperature variances. By law, I have to keep my pharmacies at a certain temperature for the integrity of the pharmaceuticals. Not so in a UPS truck. So mail order was not the best way to provide pharmaceutical care, but it provided another profit bonanza for the P.B.M. industry.
So really what they've done is they've cut out the community pharmacist.
Absolutely.
Which is another ball of wax.
Right.
But in so doing, and they've kept all the prices secret.
Yes.
All right. And so really what they've done is they've really set this stuff up where the consumer is just getting ripped off all the time. Is that fair to say?
Yes. And the other thing that I want to mention is that, it's by design. They tell you that you can only get 30 days at your local pharmacy, but if you use the mail order house, you can get 90 days. There is no law and there is no reason why you can't get 90 days at your local pharmacy.
I can get 90 days at Duane Reade.
Sometimes. But for the most part, over the years, they limited you to 30 days locally, but 90 days at mail, and that was by design. That was designed to steer business to themselves.
I see.
Yes.
Talk about this business. I know it's another source of revenue that normally would be subtracted from the cost of drugs. This notion of rebates.
Rebates came about many years ago. Big pharmaceutical companies used to try to gain market share by detailing doctors.
Explain to our viewers about detailing.
They would have sales reps, and they would go in and tell doctors how good the drug was, all the positive attributes of a drug, hoping that the doctor would prescribe the drug on a regular basis. But they would also, send them on trips and buy them lunches and dinners, and the government felt that was a conflict of interest. So when the Stark laws were passed, it kind of limited
Stark laws?
The Stark laws. It prohibited drug companies from showering doctors with gifts and trips, and so the government passed the Stark laws.
In effect, bribing them.
In a matter of speaking.
Kickbacks.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the drug companies had to find ways to now still gain market share for their products without breaking the law. And the P.B.M. saw this as an opportunity to help them with that problem. So this is how formularies started to really take a hold. And a formulary is a preferred list of drugs. And the way a drug usually made it to preferred status on a formulary was to rebate money back to the prescription benefit manager, all right, for their assistance in gaining market share against their competitors. So
now let me just interrupt for a second. So the doctor is prescribing drugs, or is leaving it to the P.B.M. to figure out what drug?
Well, that's a good question. The doctor prescribes the drug. The patient takes the prescription to the pharmacy, and the pharmacy has to tell the patient that that drug is not preferred, so you'll pay a higher copay, or that drug is not covered at all. Now, that decision is made based on not what the patient needs, but based on the rebate dollars that are attached to the drug.
And the patient has no idea about that.
No. And basically, they're telling the doctor what that patient should have based on their profitability. So the doctor is basically being told what he's to prescribe based on rebates.
And a lot of times, I don't know, why would the doctors care? Did the doctors care?
Absolutely. The doctor is patient-oriented. And if I'm a physician and I have a patient who's successfully being treated for hypertension with a certain drug, I don't see why it's necessary to have to change the drug, which may not work as well, for the benefit of the P.B.M.
Got it. You just used the phrase patient-oriented. So it used to be, I remember when I was a young man, I'm still a young man, there was a relationship between the doctor and the patient. And today, my sense of it from most people is that the patient is a transaction.
Yes.
And that relationship isn't there anymore. So and this is a result of all of these, it seems to me, correct me if I don't have it right, is a result of all of these things like managed care, the HMOs. And so in those cases, why would the doctor care? He doesn't even know what the patient is. They only spend 5 minutes with them.
Well, and that's a good point. The doctor is spending only 5 minutes with the patient because he now has to see, instead of 2 patients an hour, he has to see 12, because his fees are not what they were 10 years ago, because the managed care organizations have ratcheted them down. So it's not that the doctor doesn't want to spend time with you, it's that he can't afford to. So healthcare, we lost sight of the patient. From start to finish, we lost sight of the patient, and healthcare became a monetary subject, and the patient is kind of being victimized, because of the dollars. We're chasing, lower cost, and we forgot about the patient in the process.
I don't know if we forgot about them, but the emphasis sounds to me is between Big Pharma, the hospitals, and the prescription benefit managers. It's like a free-for-all for them.
Absolutely.
And the patients, if it works out okay, it's a happy accident.
Yeah.
Talk about this business with specialty pharmacy. That's something I don't think our viewers know about.
Yeah, well, specialty pharmacy started a little while back with the inception of biotech drugs. And there are certain drugs that have special handling requirements. And they were classified as specialty pharmaceuticals, and they could only be handled by certain pharmacies where there was an educational piece attached to it, special storage conditions. So specialty now became a whole new realm in pharmaceutical care. And a lot of the newer biotech drugs that you see advertised are considered specialty drugs. Drugs to treat rheumatoid arthritis and growth hormones, such drugs as that. So they're handled by specialty pharmacies. And it basically limits the access to these drugs. So you can only get these drugs from a specialty pharmacy. You can't go to your local pharmacy and get a lot of these drugs. So
let me just stop you for a second.
Go ahead.
Why aren't these drugs available to every pharmacy?
Because the manufacturer feels that there's special handling requirements, there's special educational requirements with this drug, so they limit it to people who they feel are qualified to fulfill those requirements.
Well, you're a registered pharmacist. When you become a registered pharmacist, are you constrained?
No.
How does this come up?
I don't agree with the concept, because I certainly feel that I'm more than capable to handle it and provide the pharmaceutical care to the patient.
So arbitrarily, what I think I hear you telling me is that arbitrarily they single out particular pharmacists and they say, this is the specialty pharmacy and you have to get it if you're going to get it at all from this person.
Exactly.
Sounds like restraint of trade to me.
It is, absolutely. There's no reason why I can't provide the product. My own child, I couldn't provide his medication. I had to get it from the FedEx man.
What do the regulators say about this?
They're okay with it. They're okay with it because obviously pharma has convinced them that this is the way it should be done.
Convince them with lobbying or convince them with logical argument?
Convince them with sales pitch and spin.
All right, continue. Sorry.
So we have specialty drugs now you can only get from one place. So again, the P.B.M saw this as another area of profitability. So the P.B.Ms have now bought the major specialty pharmacies in the United States. So specialty pharmacies such as Accredo, CuraScripts, they're now owned by P.B.Ms. And they went one step further where they would make exclusive arrangements with manufacturers. So now you can only get one drug from one specialty pharmacy. And I'll give you an example. I had a drug to treat infants. It was an injectable.
Called?
Acthar Gel.
Okay.
When I purchased it in the past, I paid $400 for it, which I considered a lot of money.
It is a lot of money.
Okay, they took the drug away from me. I can no longer dispense it. So now when you get it from that one pharmacy, it's $24,000.
Excuse me. You had a drug that you were dispensing to people that the doctor prescribed. It's $400 for a treatment, for a pill. What are we talking about here?
It's an injection.
An injection.
And it's given on a
and
period.
now this P.B.M. took this over, made a specialty pharmacy, and now it's $24,000.
$24,000.
Went from $400 to $24,000.
And it's to treat infants.
And this is something that comes out, it's in people's premium. Somehow we're paying for this.
If the insurance company chooses to pay it, somebody's paying for it.
That's outrageous.
Absolutely. Yep.
I'm flabbergasted, and I'm sure our viewers are flabbergasted
Yeah.
with this. I mean, this explains a lot as to
Absolutely.
why
Yeah.
these costs are going through the roof.
This is tricks of the trade.
Talk about this, what you call NDC. What is this NDC, package size manipulation?
NDC stands for National Drug Code. And every drug in America, when it's produced, is assigned a National Drug Code. It consists of 11 digits. The first 5 digits indicate the manufacturer. The second 4 digits indicate the product itself. The last 2 digits indicate the package size. Now, there is a price attached to that National Drug Code. There's a price. So this code is $10. In America, we have something called repackaging. The FDA grants somebody a repackaging license, so now they can buy drugs in bulk. They can buy it in a 55-gallon drum and take the pills and put it into a smaller bottle. When they put it into a smaller bottle, they assign it a new National Drug Code.
And new price.
At the same time, they attach a new price. Now, that repack may cost up to 50% more than the original manufacturer's bottle. So when a payer pays the bill, he doesn't know which one he's paying for. Is he paying for the drug from Pfizer, or is he paying for the drug that was repacked with a different price, a higher price? So that was another way that PBMs make money. Not only they were doing it on retail claims, but they certainly do it at mail order.
Sounds to me, Donald, that a good thing to happen here to help solve this issue would be for all the prices that everybody charges to be posted on the internet. I mean, Pfizer's got prices that they charge for this stuff. Why isn't that price list public?
It is public. There are publications.
Public on the internet. Why can't you look up on the internet some drug that Pfizer makes and see what Pfizer charges for it? Now, you know you're getting that from a pharmacy or whatnot. You know what Pfizer charges. You know what you're charging. You know, there's a difference.
Yeah.
And you're telling us that this difference is not, 10, 20, 30%. It may be 400 times more.
The prices are out there. You just have to know where to look to find them. We subscribe to what we did in the past. There's something called a Red Book, and the Red Book published every price of every innovator drug and every repack.
Is that a public document?
Absolutely.
So you can look it up on the internet?
Yes.
I want you to send me the URL for that. I want to take a
Okay.
look
Absolutely.
What the manufacturers
My pleasure.
charge.
Yep.
It seems to me also a nice requirement would be in terms of disclosure, when this drug is labeled by the P.B.M., they should have the price that the manufacturer charges on the label. What's the problem?
They're assigning a new price to their bottle.
They can do that, but I want to also know what the manufacturer, they're just middlemen. They're not developing this drug. They don't manufacture it. They're buying it from somebody. Let them disclose what they paid for it from Pfizer.
Okay, but the problem is you don't know you're being billed using a repack.
And they can bill it whatever they bill. But I'm saying if Pfizer's charging 3 cents, they repack it to whatever they want. But I want that 3 cents to show. Is there a problem with that?
There is no problem with that. This is part of the transparency movement that's going on now in the United States.
All right, talk about this pass-through transparent model.
Pass-through, and this is the model now. It's basically the old model that's making a comeback. And basically what a pass-through transparent model encompasses is the payer pays what the pharmacy was paid for the service. There's no fat in the middle. The PBM is not making any money in the middle except for their administration fee.
Fair enough.
Fair enough. Everybody's allowed to make some money. But the egregious profits that are built in are removed. Now, the payer has the ability to now see what the pharmacy was paid and know that I'm paying what the drug actually costs to dispense.
This is before rebates.
This is before rebates, right? Now, I'm glad you brought that up. Now, they can also see the pharma agreements that the PBM has with Big Pharma and know that, okay, Big Pharma is getting an $8 rebate. That $8 rebate belongs to the payer. They can actually see the flow of money. That $8 goes to the PBM, and the whole $8 should go back to the payer. Currently, we have a system where the $8 goes to the PBM, they keep $6 and give the payer $2, telling the payer that they only got a $2 rebate.
All right, so again, this all comes back to disclosure.
It's all disclosure, transparency.
And it seems to me that this is something that our elected representatives could insist on. Listen, they have control over labeling.
Absolutely.
And they could say, I remember when I would get a prescription from a pharmacy, community pharmacy, it had the price on the bottle. The stuff that I get
Yeah.
today, I think it's Optimex or whatever. There's no prices on that bottle.
Yeah, basically, as a buyer of anything, you should know what you're buying, and you should be able to know the price when you buy it. Is it a good value? Well, how would you know if it was a good value if you weren't allowed to see the price? So there's a lot of smoke and mirrors here, and so what transparency removes that, and the second half of the equation is it's all auditable. If I want to go back and I want to check, I have that right. Some of the older contracts, the payer had no right to go and audit. So that has to be built into your contract.
So in other words, here's what we're going to charge you, and you have no way to question it.
Nope.
Incredible.
That information is proprietary, and that's their favorite word.
Now, we only have a couple of minutes left. I want to talk to something that you mentioned today at lunch.
Okay.
And this has to do with the demise of the community pharmacists.
Absolutely.
Now, why don't you talk to that issue?
All right, the way that PBMs marketed their services was they would send the pharmacy a unilateral contract. There was no negotiation. They sent you the contract dictating your reimbursements. Now, if you signed the contract, you lost your profitability, you lost your margins that you needed to cover your overhead and expenses. If you didn't sign the contract, you lost your patients. So you either go out of business slow or go out of business fast. Pick one. So, over the years I've had patients say, well, how do you compete with the big box drugstores? And I said, well, that's easy. I compete with them any day of the week by providing better service. What I can't compete with is a managed care organization or a P.B.M. sending me a contract, take it or leave it, shove it down my throat. Now, over the years, they have basically competed in the marketplace by paying me less and less. That's the only way they could compete. So basically, they've sold their services with the money that belonged to the pharmacist. So they were paying the pharmacy very little, they were billing the payer a lot, and keeping the money in the middle. And that's how they have become the darlings of Wall Street. Now, because of that, the mom and pop drugstore, the corner drugstore, has disappeared. It's not because of the CVSs and the Walgreens and the big chains. They really don't hurt us. They're good competitors, but we can compete. What we can't compete with is somebody telling us how much we're allowed to earn. And this is why I feel that the PBM industry is responsible for the demise of a great profession.
And there's also another drawback, I think, which you also mentioned, and that is in this business of service, one of the services used to provide are rudimentary medical services. And you talk about this business we only have a couple of minutes left, about the inoculations.
For many years, especially in the state of New York, pharmacists were not allowed to immunize. And we were the 49th state, I believe, to allow pharmacists to immunize. So when I was president of society, I did a lot of work on trying to get this bill moved forward. And finally, the bill was passed. And so now in New York, you can go to a pharmacy at any time and get your flu shot and get a pneumonia shot. And
Shingle shot.
Shingles, Zostavax. And we've really made a lot of headway in influenza rates in New York because pharmacists were the most accessible health professional. You can walk in without an appointment at any time, Sunday morning.
And you're a doctor.
Get a flu shot.
And you're a doctor.
Absolutely. So, we're there for the community. We've always been there. We'd like to stay there. But the marketplace is not letting us do what we were meant to do.
This has been fascinating, and I could go on for a long time,
Yeah,
but we've run out of time. Folks, this ends the Larry Park Show for this evening. We've been talking about how prescription benefit management companies greatly inflate the cost of your drugs and also have hastened the demise of community pharmacies, which are really a tremendous service to everybody. And we had as a guest Mr. Donald Catalino, a real expert in this. Don, I want to thank you again for taking the time to come on the show.
My pleasure.
And folks, thank you so much for taking the time to watch the Larry Park Show. I'm Larry Parks. Please tune in again next week. Good night and God bless. Thank you.